Uvlalotuk, Uvana Atagan Napoktuk. I'm Dr. Kat Milligan-Myrie. Inupak Miruna, Napoktuk Miruna, Kikit Tarok Miruna. I'm Inupak from the Napoktuk Miak tribe. I grew up in Kotzebue, Alaska, which was called Kikit Tarok before it was colonized. My parents are Sally and James McClellan, so Anaga Sally, Apaga James, and I'm an assistant professor at the University of Connecticut in molecular and cell biology.
Ayanchu Buenas tardes, soy Sandy Grande. I identify as Quechua. I'm a new professor in the political science department with affiliations in philosophy, American studies, and the race and ethnicity and politics program, which is soon to be the Indigenous Race, Ethnicity, and Politics program.
Yate, She'eya Mylan Pentia, Dasha Janet, Shidinde, Donash Ejanishle. Hello, my name is Mylan Pentia. I am Navajo in Zuni Pueblo. I am new to the UConn system. I'm currently a scholar in the Young Innovative Investigator program, and I'm currently working in a prostate cancer lab.
Good day, Louise. Nochara Benawapskiwi. My name is Sage Phillips. I am a member of the Penobscot Nation. I'm a junior at UConn Stores, double majoring in political science and human rights with a minor in Native American Indigenous Studies. I'm also the student coordinator for the Native American cultural programs on our campus, as well as the founding president of our newest student org, NASA.
So my name is Leslie Caramile. I'm an assistant professor at UConn Health. I'm Eastern Band Cherokee descent. That is Cherokee tribe that's in North Carolina. And here at UConn, I work in the Department of Cell Biology in the Division of Cardiovascular Biology, and I run a prostate cancer lab.
When I talk to students, I usually say I got kicked out of kindergarten on my first day of class, and it went downhill from there as my relationship to formal schooling.
I did not know that being a research scientist was a thing that you could do when I was growing up in high school. So I thought that I was going to go into hotel administration because that's what people who wanted to change Kotzebue could do. They could run the hotel where our tourists would spend their money, and we could improve the way that people viewed the Arctic Circle that way.
So my journey to UConn Health has been a very winding road. I always had a love for medicine and also a new love for research, and I initially started out when I was growing up wanting to be a doctor.
I didn't grow up on our reservation. It was just me, only child, and I went to a predominantly white high school.
I was actually a undergrad at UConn. I'm originally from Connecticut. And I thought back to myself and I was like, my parents really fostered my interest in the sciences.
Using community college education for a few years, brought up my GPA, gained some experience, and transferred to the University of Wisconsin-Madison. There I figured out that research was not just something that had been done in the past to make a list of things you had to memorize for classes, but it was things that people were actually doing now on the campus that I was on. And that was thrilling to me.
I was also an athlete. I played soccer, and that was my primary entryway into post-secondary education. I don't know that I was thinking about college so much. My dad is an artist, and so I was also very much interested in the arts. So I went to Syracuse University where I played soccer and was also an art major.
Got my undergrad degree in biology at New Mexico State University. There I stayed on to do some graduate work and some graduate research, all while in the background knowing I wanted to go to medical school, but still kind of figuring out which path I wanted to take. Was it medicine or was it research? And really finding out that it was both that I wanted to do.
My journey to UConn was a bit different. I did look for schools with the best Native programs for me, and somehow I ended up at UConn, where I've kind of taken it upon myself to build the program up myself.
When it became time to apply for school, I decided, I'm going to go to UConn and go into the sciences. So I did that. I graduated with a degree in physiology and neurobiology.
So I decided that I wanted to become a teacher and or work with, again, students that sort of fit the traditional mold of schooling.
I started working in research labs, and from there my love of microbiology just blossomed. I am fascinated with microbes that cause disease and microbes that help us develop, and I like bringing in my indigenous knowledge in this and thinking of these systems as a whole, not just how one microbe interacts with its host, but how microbes in general interact with their hosts. And so that's what I do now. I study how our genetic background contributes to the ability of microbes to protect us from diseases.
None of my journey to education is very purposeful, so I literally looked up graduate school, which I didn't even really know existed, gifted education and the arts, and there was a huge program at UConn, and then there was a program at Kent State University in Ohio. And I didn't want to stay home, so I went to Ohio, sight unseen. Struggled there a bit until I found a program in the Cultural Foundations of Education, and that's, I think, where my interest really started to turn around. I had opportunities to kind of forge my own path and delve into critical theories of education, and where the first time probably I started was able to formally study Native Studies, which at the time was just a nascent field. So it's amazing how much the field of Native American Indigenous Studies has grown since then. But whenever I finished and got my PhD, then I went back to my first project, which was Red Pedagogy, and that definitely set me on my way. And very fast forward, now I'm a professor at UConn in political science.
So while I was at New Mexico State University, I applied to medical school and were then matriculated to the University of North Dakota, where I completed medical school back in 2019. But from there, I decided to continue on with some research, which is why I'm here at UConn. I'm going to be completing a one-year research program as I'm applying to a family medicine residency.
I joined the Native American cultural programs on our campus. It was me and one other graduate student that decided to take it upon ourselves and try to start from the beginning and build the program up. Now we're in the full swing of things. We have a lot of support from other faculty and staff on campus. Now that we have our new Native American cluster hire, that's been really great, and we also have seen that we have a lot of support from other student orgs and groups on campus.
So I didn't go back to get a graduate degree, until maybe 12 years after I graduated college with my bachelor's. And I went to University of Washington in Seattle, and I got my PhD there. And then I decided, what do I want to do now? What do I want to do with my PhD? Well, I wanted to stay in the sciences. I wanted to bring more Native individuals into the sciences, show them that if I'm here, I could be a role model, and you could come here too. You could do exactly what I did.
Long-term goals is I want to go back to my reservation, the Navajo Nation in New Mexico or in Arizona. Our reservation does span over 3 states, but would hopefully be back home in New Mexico, doing family medicine and also continuing on with some form of research.
So to embrace my culture and identity through academia, I pretty much show up as my authentic self every day.
It took me a long time to figure out how to embrace my culture through academia, in part because I spent so much time trying to assimilate so that I would look like and act like and behave like the people who were around me, because that's what all my role models did. They looked like everyone around them. They behaved the way everyone around them did.
Yeah, I don't know that at least the mainstream academy or academia and how I understand my own personal familial association with my culture, what it means to be who we are as cultural peoples, are really commensurate or compatible.
How I embrace kind of being me in academia is really right now is just existing in that workspace. There aren't a lot of us working in research labs, and kind of being in that space, I think, I bring up a lot about my culture when we talk about stuff. When it comes to research, kind of the bad things about research, kind of what researchers have done to our people and what they continue to do and how we can change that.
And so it wasn't until I was a postdoctoral fellow and had spent some time as a graduate student with student groups like the American Indian Science and Engineering Society and Wangshik, who were all Native American students. They really helped me find my voice again. And then as a postdoctoral fellow, I worked with a group called Native Strategies, and we met once a month to talk about how to improve the campus environment for Natives. And that's where I fully realized that it wasn't enough for me to assimilate to white culture or lower 48 Native culture, that it was okay for me to embrace all of myself. And it was through working with other people on a monthly basis to figure out what being Indigenous meant on our campus. And that helped me realize what being Indigenous meant to me. And so during that time, I really more fully embraced who I am. I started wearing my Native clothes. I started practicing my Native culture. I started practicing my Native language. And that's where I really felt like I was coming into myself as a Native woman.
And I think more than anything, rather than try to change the academy, it's taken me a long time, but I think eventually, rather than try to change the academy, I just sort of came to peace with what is offered by what we understand as the university, and take from it what is useful, and do what I can as a person throughout my life to connect and reground myself in my culture as much as possible outside of my life in the academy.
I've been lucky enough to be here at UConn, and I work under Dr. Leslie Caramile, who is also an Indigenous person, so it just happened that we crossed paths, and I'm working with her and under her in her lab. So together we're really kind of unique in that there's two Native researchers working in one lab within the UConn system, and then I enjoy this opportunity to be with her, and we kind of talk every day about what it is to be Indigenous in the lab. You know, it's very unique. I think we had a conversation. I described us as two unicorns that had met, and to be in that space.
I don't tell people that, I don't go around saying, oh, look at me, I'm Native American. I don't. However, it is something that is part of my nature. It's part of me. You can tell a lot of times by the way I'm dressed, or the interests I have, just the casual conversation that I have. So that would really be the way that I approach bringing myself to UConn. I just come as my authentic self.
The way that I embrace my identity through my academia would be just carrying my ancestors with me in the work that I'm doing, and I'm always acknowledging that if it weren't for their strength and resilience, navigating their hardships, I wouldn't be where I am today. I think the biggest misunderstanding of our cultures is that we still exist, and it's a big misconception that we don't.
I would say, first of all, that we're still here.
Well, there's a lot of things that people misunderstand about Indigenous culture. I can come up with several million.
People tend to think of us as a monolith. We are not all one group. We have different beliefs, we have different traditions, we have different ways of communicating with each other. I think that is what is most often misinterpreted.
A lot of, I think, what they misunderstand about that's where we come from, about our ancestors, is that we are very primitive.
There's some continuity. So in most tribes, you respect your elders. You introduce yourself by talking about where you come from, both in terms of tribe, but also in terms of family. But there are so many other differences, even in the way that we acknowledge where we come from, even in the way that we think about how we belong in this world. So I think the biggest misconception that people have about Indigenous groups is that we are all one.
A lot of people are under the impression that tribes on the East Coast are gone. that we are not here anymore, that they're all disappeared, they all melded into society, completely gone, which is 100% not true.
That we didn't know anything, and we were kind of emerged into this world as just like wandering aimlessly without any knowledge of anything. But really, when we talk about our creation stories and we talk about our people and our ancestors, we were very smart. We were very knowledgeable about the land, hunting and farming, and really just surviving, kind of just being there in that space. And a lot of people just think that, we come from just confused people, and we're waiting, for first contact to then be taught how to live.
I think in the Northeast, people are often surprised that Native peoples in the U.S. and certainly globally are not just around, but still very much practicing their traditional ways of being.
Part of that for me personally, the most harmful thing that is misunderstood about us is that we don't look how, the movies necessarily portray us to look. I don't have the darkest skin, I don't have the darkest hair, I don't have a lot of the features, but I am still undeniably Indigenous. If I could tell my younger self one thing, it would be that you get to decide and you get to showcase your culture how you want it to be.
Just to stand up more and to be proud of who you are.
It's okay to be proud of where you come from, and it's okay to embrace your Native background. When I was growing up, being called a Native was an insult, so somebody really wanted to put you down, they would say, quit acting so Native. And now I embrace that.
There's going to be people who are going to tell you that because you look different, or you think different, or you're from a community that maybe doesn't have as much successful people, that you aren't going to be successful. But you are going to be successful, and continue to hold your culture and your language. It's very important to you.
Don't let anyone tell you who you are.
All the struggle and at times embarrassment and ill feeling about not knowing where you fit in a society that doesn't see you will eventually transform into kind of an energy, a passion, a generative rage at times that will become your life's purpose, and to not get too down about it.
One word to describe the legacy of my ancestors is enduring.
The legacy of my ancestors is proud.
One word for me, it would not be a word in English. It would be a Quechua word known as che'e, which is hard to explain in English.
One word to describe our legacy as Indigenous people, I think, is resiliency.
The reason that I am the way I am is because my ancestors did everything that they did.
It's just an understanding that we can hold multiple truths at the same time, which isn't to say that there isn't, as a result of that, asymmetries, struggles over power, life and death that are really tragic and at times violent. It's just something that we accept, and I think it's something that, in looking back now, it really informed when I produced art. I think art, and now that I'm a scholar, my scholarship, and I appreciate, particularly in these times, that I just have a fundamental understanding of that.
We've gone through a lot of challenges, but we've been resilient in still being here to this day, and still being able to practice our culture, speak our language, and be in spaces that really weren't created for us, but we're here. So I think resilient is a nice word to describe us.
Strong, and that's for many reasons. Strong in the sense that, they made it through, and they navigated those hardships so that their legacy could be here today.
What does being Indigenous mean to me? It's everything.
And I would say, in addition to that, a Quechua woman more specifically, is to understand that our primary purpose in life is to forge and sustain relations, to build and make kin, and that's my work every single day. When I wake up in the morning, from direct relations in my house to relations that, in a much broader scale that human beings have to the rest of the world.
Being connected with all of our relatives, all living things, the soil we walk on, the air we breathe, the water we drink, and also those around us, animals, our living relatives, those relatives we've lost.
It's a uniqueness that we have, and we're really like holders of a very special knowledge and a special language and a special culture. Me specifically being Navajo and Zuni, kind of holding those, but knowing that we're all pretty diverse within the Indigenous community.
Being Indigenous means to me community. It means showing up every day as my authentic self. It means teaching others about what it is to be a Native American, what we do, who we are, and just that we're still here.
It's who I am. I'm part white. I'm part white, part Native. And when I think of who I am, I don't think of this half of me is white, or that half of me is white, or this part of me is Native. It's all a part of me. When I think about being Indigenous, I think about what I'm teaching my kids. I think about what my Ana taught me. I think about the foods that I eat. I think about the language that I'm trying to hold on to. I think about the Native dances that I practiced back in Anchorage with my family and friends. What being Indigenous means to me is embracing all of that culture along with everything else that makes me who I am.
I would say another thing about indigeneity is kind of like a presence and a constance of cycles and circles, and coming back to UConn somehow to me feels like a full circle moment, and finding a home in a new discipline of political science also feels like a new home. So I would just say that I'm grateful to be now a member of the UConn community, to be a Husky, as they say, and I look forward to everything that's going to come.
The last thing I want to say is to my Indigenous students, you belong here. I felt for a long time like I didn't belong in academia. I felt like I had to give up a part of myself to be a part of academia. You are here because you have skills and talent that somebody saw in your application and they wanted you to be here. You belong here, and you don't have to change who you are to continue to be here. Now that you're here, you can bring your whole self, and we'll take all of that. That's all I have to say.